The best coaches in the game, we really ain't playing. We regroup up in the Slack chat where the coaches debrief. We be piecing these puzzles, occupy the chunk of the pie. Ain't no lie when we hit the block, helmet's casket is top. You be seeing helmet after helmet, helmet after helmet. First place, second place, fifth place, eighth place, 12th place, 15, 16, 20. So many helmets, you got blurred vision, we got too many. Get your tech. Oh man, shit. They got us fucked up. Army, recruit. We pledge always to have that edge. We don't fire warning shots. Competition just drop. We locked and loaded before lock. Whatever the time, yeah. Do you even correlate?
Being the best requires a willingness to outwork your competition. There's always someone smarter, faster, sharper, more naturally gifted to come around.
Welcome back, DFS Army. This is FantasyFling for another look at Yahoo DFS main slate. We're taking a look at Week 7. Let's go. Before we go ahead and take a look at Week 7, we're going to look back at Week 6 and cash lineup, do a little bit of lineup review. It was a good week. Had a great week in cash games over on Yahoo. And then, of course, we did the showdown on Monday night and was able to make some money in the baller. So as far as cash games, we are going to be sad in Week 7 since we don't have Josh Allen to play this week with his ever so high floor. But last week we played Josh Allen in that Kansas City versus Buffalo game. We ate the running back chalk. We played Ramondre Stevenson. We played Kenneth Walker, and we played Eno Benjamin. So the pay down options allowed us to pay up for Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and Travis Kelce in that game. And even with MVS getting 0 points and, really just something you can't really expect because the target share was there. He actually had a touchdown called back, but even with him getting 0 points, we were still able to score enough points across the entire lineup, including at defense with 13 points from the New England Patriots defense. This is a lineup that I was on early in the week. I said it was contingent on, Benjamin getting the start with Connor out, and it's what we were end up being able to play over on this past Sunday, the slate. So even with Lockett and MBS busting, we had such a high floor with Allen, Ramondre Stevenson, Kenneth Walker, Stephon Diggs, and Travis Kelce. And that we were still able to hit the cash line. So floor is something that we look for in cash games, and it's why we will continue to target floor and just players that have low variance. So let's go ahead and do a game by game look at the slate for Week 7. Now, this is over at the Domination Station with DFS Army. Of course, if you are not a DFS Army subscriber, you need to be a DFS Army subscriber. I know a lot of you people maybe watch the podcast but aren't subscribers. So right now, you can actually try this for free. So at me at Twitter and on FantasyFling, and I could send you the link to do so. We have a bunch of different sign-up options where if you sign up, they will do a deposit match and you get a DFS Army subscription for free. If you just play DraftKings, you don't want to do that, you can use code FantasyFling for 10% off a VIP subscription. So a couple of the games that stand out right off the bat, we got Seattle and the Chargers. Now, the Chargers, it kind of depends if we're going to get Keenan Allen back or not. Justin Herbert really has not done very well in recent weeks, and I think it's just been a matter of him missing Keenan Allen and, going against elite cornerbacks like last week, going against Patrick Surtain. They're able to shut down Mike Williams, and Justin Herbert wasn't able to find the end zone. However, if he gets Keenan Allen back this week, he's going against a Seattle defense that is very poor, one of the bottom in the league. So Herbert stacks are in play. I do think he's cash playable with Keenan Allen. Without Keenan Allen, him and Mahomes are the same price, so I would rather go that way. On the Seattle side, obviously Kenneth Walker's in play. The usual suspects: DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Now, the game right next to it, one of the top 3 high projected games, and we got a lot of games under 50. That's just kind of what it is. Scoring's been down. So we have the second, I believe the third highest projected game, Kansas City going against San Francisco. Kansas City coming off a loss, Stud coming off a dud. They're obviously looking to get right. On the Kansas City side, obviously Mahomes is in play. He's who I like in cash this week, as we'll get to for my cash game quarterback, with the main guys, the Jalen Hurts and the Josh Allens being off the slate. Mahomes is probably the safest option. And obviously Kelsey, I believe you can go back to MBS, Juju. These are guys that you would have consideration. On the San Francisco side, last week, they were in a negative game script losing to Atlanta. We can't always predict game flow in the NFL. It's very hard to do. But certainly with the Chiefs, I feel like you could predict that the Chiefs will be winning this game. San Francisco would most likely get in a negative game flow. So we don't like Jeff Wilson in those game flows, but we do like Deebo Samuel. We like Ayuk. And then Kittle coming on last week. His target share has been much higher in the past couple of weeks. So the third game, the highest projected game, we have Detroit going against Dallas. Now, Dallas, they are expecting to get Dak back this week. Spoiler alert, I like Dallas pieces in this game going against Detroit's horrible defense. And then Detroit might be getting healthy. So maybe this game can shoot off a little bit if Dallas can, obviously get out to a lead, and then Detroit is trailing. They get their pass catching running back this week, hopefully with Swift. They should be getting Amon St. Brown back this week. So this is a game that, even though, it's under 50 points, it's right there. And hopefully we hope this game hits the over, and there's some goodness in this game. Now, fourth highest projected game is Atlanta and Cincinnati. Now, both these teams did really well last week. Atlanta, they certainly got their offense going. Mariota was good. Kyle Pitts finally got in the end zone. And then Cincinnati, this was the top leverage stack of Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase this past week. They finally got going. Joe Burrow was low owned. Chase was one of my top leverage plays that I actually mentioned on my article last week and on the podcast. At that point, he was projected 5% owned. He was talked about quite a bit, so he ended up getting up to about 14% ownership. But regardless, he smashed him and Burrow. Mixon got in the end zone. The offense just looked way better last week. So this is a game that we hope both of these offenses keep going. So there'll be some fantasy goodness in this. Now, the other games, we have Baltimore going against Cleveland. Baltimore hasn't been good for Lamar recently. He's actually been a high variance player. He's had a pretty low floor the past several weeks. So even though Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts are off the slate, Lamar's really only a guy I want in GPPs at this point. Now, I believe he is supposed to get Bateman back, hopefully, and we don't know what's going on with J.K. Dobbins. Kenyon Drake had a big week last week, some good holes. He looked pretty explosive. And then obviously Mark Andrews is always in play. He scored about 26 points last week, but he had a couple other opportunities to score touchdowns, so he could have easily had the ceiling game that we expect from him, so he's always in play. As far as Cleveland, obviously, it's Chubb. He is very expensive on Yahoo. He's $40. I'm probably not going there. There are some better running back options that I like this week, as we'll get into. And then Amari Cooper's been good. Obviously, Njoku is in play as well at tight end. Tampa and Carolina. So Tampa, their offense was kind of in disarray last week, which was surprising because they were going against Pittsburgh. But, it's any given Sunday, so it's really hard to tell sometimes. But, Brady, I don't know if what's going on in his personal life is certainly having an effect on his play. It seems that way. There were times where, they're in the red zone and he gave a fake handoff to Leonard Fournette. And yet nobody ran a route except Mike Evans. And he kind of halfway ran a route. Like everyone expected it to be a run. So their offense just hasn't been clicking. Hopefully they get that together this week. I think Godwin's in play. Mike Evans is coming in low ownership. And then, of course, Leonard Fournette, averaging 20-plus touches over about 3 weeks now. He's certainly in play. in cash games, and really in all formats. And then with Cameron Brate being carted off the field, we like Cade Otton again this week if he plays. Brady was targeting him deep down the middle. He's targeting him in the end zone. So he certainly has consideration for us at tight end, specifically since he's minimally priced at $10. So New York and Jacksonville. Wow, we didn't expect New York to be 5-1. Well, I mean, just crazy. With really Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, and then just a bunch of nobodies at wide receiver. But Saquon being back has obviously had a big impact on this team. And he's now, it's funny, I literally talked about him like week 1, week 2 about being extremely underpriced. He was like $21. Well, he's now $40. So he's now the highest priced he could be at running back over on Yahoo. This is a game going against Jacksonville. Pretty low scoring game. Not a ton to like there just based on Saquon being so high priced. I do like Wan'Dale Robinson because he was getting red zone looks. He had a touchdown last week. And then on Jacksonville side, ETN looked really good. He's cutting a lot into James Robinson's carries. And he just looked very explosive last week. He could have had a big game. He broke a couple big runs off that could have easily been touchdowns. So they also have some wide receivers that are coming in as top fantasy points per dollar plays. Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Marvin Jones, some of these guys. So Indy going against Tennessee. Tennessee coming off the bye. Obviously, Derrick Henry's always in play. I like Robert Woods this week because no Treylon Burks. So Robert Woods' target share is back up there, and he's very low price. On the Indy side, maybe they'll get Jonathan Taylor back. Obviously, if they do, you can't play Deion Jackson, but he was great last week, great leverage play. That was something that came out late that we knew Taylor and Hines was going to be out. And it was a sharp play because when they played against the Broncos the week before, he looked better than Lindsey. What we didn't expect is Matt Ryan to throw the ball for 58 attempts. So Pittman's in play. Obviously, he looks good. And then Alec Pierce is the number 2 option in that offense. And, I wouldn't go there in cash, but in tournaments, you could certainly go there. This game does have a low total. Green Bay versus Washington. I don't really like anything in this game. Green Bay, they don't look right. Rodgers lost to Vontae Adams. We were fooling ourselves if we thought that wasn't going to be a big deal and you were just going to plug anybody in there. They didn't sign anybody. They drafted, some young guys who just haven't been that great yet. So they're struggling. They lost to the Jets last week. Carson Wentz is out with a thumb injury. So we don't know, what their offense is going to look like. Now it's a timeshare between Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson. I think you could just avoid that game. And then last couple games, obviously, we got the New York Jets going against the Denver Broncos. This total is insanely low. It's 38.5. I don't really like anything of this game. It's the Broncos offense has been a mess. And then the Jets, they've looked decent. Mainly Breece Hall. Zach Wilson, he's not great. They're winning games, but they're winning games because of Breece Hall at this point. So this game total is low, and it's in Denver, and Denver has a really good defense. So I think this is just kind of an avoid with the exception of, Breece Hall. I do think he is in play, certainly in cash games, but more, not really in cash, but more so in tournaments. And then last, we have the Houston Texans going against the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, love Josh Jacobs this week. It's a great matchup. I do think you could play Adams. He's been great. I actually would probably prefer Adams more so in tournaments as kind of a play off of Jacobs. I think the matchup is better for Jacobs, and Texans have a pretty good pass defense. So, that's probably where I would just be going as far as cash games is Jacobs. And then the Houston side, you certainly could play Dameon Pierce. Lovie Smith said he wants to get him 20 touches a game. I don't really like to play 2 running backs in the same game, specifically over on Yahoo in the half PPR format. If we're talking DraftKings and one of them's a receiving back, I don't mind that at all. But I tend to take a stand and not play 2 running backs in the same game. So if I'm choosing Jacobs or Dameon Pierce, for me this week, it's going to be Jacobs. Now, before we sort over at, top fantasy points per dollar and the domination station and whatnot, I'm going to take a look That's my Yahoo write-up for the week. Now, this will be out shortly after the show. I'm putting the finishing touches on this, but these are more or less where I'm going this week. So, again, I like Mahomes because he's got 3 straight weeks over 20 points. 25 points, really, the last 3 weeks, and he is $5 discount from Lamar Jackson. Second highest projection on the slate with DFS Army, 21 points. There's no Allen, there's no Hurts, and Lamar Jackson has just been too much variance for me. So I like Mahomes. Like I said, I think you could play Herbert in cash. I'll certainly be playing him in tournaments if Josh Allen is there. I think you could definitely play him in tournaments, or not Josh Allen. I'm Keenan Allen. You could definitely play him in tournaments with without Keenan Allen, but in cash games, I would prefer Herbert with Keenan Allen just because he's just not as consistent without Keenan Allen in the lineup. But it is a great matchup, of course, going against the Seahawks. So he is the second best cash option, but where I would be going would be Mahomes. I think is a safer cash play. Now, as far as running backs, Eckler has been on fire. 20 touches per game his last 3 games. He's turned that into 6 touchdowns over that span. Second highest priced running back, but certainly worth every dollar in an elite matchup against one of the 3 worst rushing defenses in the league, Seattle Seahawks. So I do love Eckler. Now, this is kind of something where it's Wednesday, and there's really no value on the slate at this time. If running back value opens up, amazing. Where I'm kind of going right now is playing pay up at running back and paying down a little bit at wide receiver just because there's such really good value. And over on Yahoo, we do prefer to play 3 running backs, one in the flex. There's not necessarily good running back value, but they just project really well right now. And a lot of the stud wide receivers are off the slate. So if I'm paying up, I would prefer to pay up at running back this week. So now it remains to be seen whether I will play 2 running backs over $30. So I'm probably going to take a stand and play one of these in cash. And, obviously I both have exposure to Jacobs and Eckler in tournaments, but Josh Jacobs just sets up really well. Past 2 weeks, he's averaged 24.5 carries, 149.5 yards, and 1.5 touchdowns. He has elite usage and the elite production to match it. And he's got a great matchup going against the 30th ranked run defense of the Texans, who also aren't a cakewalk at and their secondary. So if Josh McDaniels, assuming rational coaching, if the game plan is smart, it'll go through Josh Jacobs this week, and they'll continue that way. So the other guy I do like, I think, as opposed to maybe paying up for Eckler, is you play Jacobs and you play Fournette, who's $27. He, between rushing attempts and receptions, he's averaged 25 touches the last 2 games, 1.5 touchdowns. We love touchdowns on Yahoo, and they're half PPR. 17.17 projection at DFS Army, which is 3rd highest for running backs against Carolina's poor run defense. So certainly like him. And then Kenneth Walker, first game, saw 21 carries. He turned in 97 yards and a touchdown. That game is high projected scoring, and the Chargers defense bleeds points to opposing running backs. So specifically, if I am not playing Eckler, I'm doing a Josh Jacobs, Leonard Fournette, Kenneth Walker lineup, you can certainly play him in that game. Now, as far as a pay down option, because we really have to offer pay down options, just both at running back and wide receiver as you piece together your lineup. I don't love the play, but it's minimum value on the slate at this moment. And Tyler projects as the 2nd highest fantasy points per dollar play at DFS Army's domination station with 0.76. I've just learned not to go against the domination station. And, I did look at his game logs. It looks like he is expecting some positive touchdown regression just based on his, projection and the fact that he's seeing double-digit carries and he hasn't gotten the end zone. So we like that this week. Now, as far as wide receivers, it's Vontae Adams, the top of the list this week. 31% target share on the season. Elite usage, and he's an elite wide receiver. Obviously, he obviously is a top pay up option this week because we have no Stephon Diggs. We have no Justin Jefferson. So he certainly slides in there as a top pay up option. He does face Texans secondary. There's only allowed one touchdown to wide receivers this season. So if I'm taking a stand on, okay, I'm going to play one Raider, which I normally my cash lineup, so I'm not trying to stack. I'm going to play Josh Jacobs, and I would prefer to go to the next wide receiver I'm about to list, CeeDee Lamb. So he's my favorite cash play this week. He projects just a fraction of a point below Devontae Adams, and he's $11 cheaper. So it's kind of a no-brainer for me. Dallas has a 28-point team total, which is second highest on the slate. So it's really no surprise why CeeDee Lamb projects so well. So Debo, I talked about the game flow that dictated the 49ers. They had to abandon the run game, go pass heavy last week with Debo and Ayuk. So this week they're going against Kansas City. So more times than not, Kansas City has the higher projected game total as we went over. So that negative game script for the running game is positive game script for the passing game. Jimmy G throwing to Debo and Ayuk, 29% target share, and he gets in the end zone, which we need that on Yahoo. 2 out of the past 3 games has been in the end zone. So 4th highest projection, DFS Army, 14.7 points. I love it. Now, couple of the teens options that we need. Godwin, really, he's underpriced compared to his usage. And this is really across all sites, right? So 32% target share. Carolina defense this week, bottom 10 in the league to opposing wide receivers. He's top 10 in both projection, just total fantasy points and fantasy points per dollar play this week for wide receivers. So we like Godwin at $18. Robert Woods, we need at least one pay down option for wide receiver. And this is certainly a really good one this week as he's the top fantasy points per dollar play where Treylon Burks out of the lineup. So it's no surprise why Woods, saw 34% target share last week, projects for 10 points, which is a mark he hit 2 out of the past 3 games. So tight ends. And, with this, I'm going to head over to the domination station real quick and just kind of show you tight ends are my pay down option. Typically when I go for tight ends, unless there's a lot of value on the slate like there was last week where, we could pay down at running back and we could afford to pay up for Travis Kelce, I'm typically going to look for value plays. So a couple of the guys that really stand out, George Kittle. Now, he's seen an uptick in the offense recently. I believe it's 27% target share last week, 8 targets in the past 2 weeks. He projects very well. Currently, I believe he is one of the top projected, just overall projected fantasy points, just behind Kelce and Andrews with a 10-point projection in that game. It is the second highest projected game on the slate. And look how cheap he is. He's $18 compared to $28 and $27. So he's healthy. They're incorporating him into the offense more. The game script looks like it'll be positive for him this week. So I love that. He's in play. And then Greg Dolce. So he's the top fantasy points per dollar play. And, I was on him before I even saw this and for 2 reasons, because I knew that, the player pricing comes out on a Monday is before the Broncos played. Dolce just was activated from IR and started in that game. Broncos traded Noah Fant last year and part of the Russell Wilson deal. Yes, the offense has been a disaster, of course. Part of the reason for that, though, is they have not had a good wide tight end option. Saubert's been okay. Albert O's been a major disappointment. Greg Dulcich was the guy they targeted with their 3rd round pick. He's talented. You saw it right away when the game started. Russell Wilson was able to scramble and hit Dulcich for a touchdown. And then he got another end zone target where him and Wilson just missed. But, the opportunities are there. And he's coming as the top fantasy points per dollar play, 0.61. So I like him. And then the other guy is obviously Cade Otton. Now, you've seen it with Tom Brady, and that offense just moves better. So I probably like him better in cash as opposed to Dolce. Dolce would be more of a tournament play for me. In fact, I played him in the baller last week, placed 41st, on the showdown. had Russell Wilson and him connected again, I might have took the thing down, but I digress. Regardless, Cade Otton, he is getting red zone opportunities. Brady targets him down the middle of the field a lot, so he is certainly a play for me as well. Now, on defense, from fantasy points per dollar play, I like the Raiders going against Houston. I was thinking about this anyway, and then I saw a top fantasy points per dollar play. Kind of a no-brainer for me. Los Angeles Chargers going against Seattle. High projected game, but it doesn't matter. We saw Arizona in the winning Millie Maker lineup last week in a high projected game. So maybe Geno is going to regress to the mean. So, that's certainly a play. It's up there. And then the other one that I was really looking at, you could do Cleveland and Baltimore, Washington Commanders going against Green Bay. But probably where I'm going more so is Las Vegas Raiders going against Houston. Projections, I just don't see paying up this week. Broncos going versus the Jets. Sure. It's always a consideration in tournaments, of course, pay up options, but this is just, look at this. I mean, this is, point difference between the Raiders all the way up to the Packers, the second highest projected team, and, $7 cheaper. So I certainly like that. Now, some of my top fantasy, not fantasy points per dollar, but top stack. So I do like Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce this week. And main reason is the stud coming off a dud narrative and just lack of other options, and then just overall ownership. So this game total is 48.5 points, 25.5 team total, and they're projected at 20%. So, when we look at the domination station and we're looking, in fact, we'll have to go to FanDuel because we do not have the Yahoo percentages quite yet, but FanDuel does a half PPR. So assuming there's no outrageous pricing on Yahoo this week, which, I've looked at, I don't think there is, they're going to be very similar. So quarterback, when I'm looking for leverage plays, I will sort by projected ownership at the domination station, and then just kind of look for some under-owned plays. So obviously Patrick Mahomes under 10%. I like that. And then with him, obviously, I do think you could. Now, I have the top stack of the week as Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, but I do think you could also play MVS this week. Now, it wasn't like MVS didn't get any targets last week. He had a touchdown called back. He's 6% owned, and people, recency bias, they're scared to go to someone who burned them last week. I'm not. I'll go right back to that person. You watch the game. He had a touchdown called back. Could have been a good week for MVS and ended up being a great week for Juju. That's how these things go. We embrace the variance, and if he's going to be low owned, I'll certainly take some shots there with him. And you could probably even double stack with Mahomes and Kelce. Now, as far as some of the top leverage plays that I like, Dak Prescott at 6%. And I think there's some stacking pieces with him as well. Obviously, CD Lamb projects really well, so he's probably going to be high owned. A lot of people will be playing him in cash, myself included. But you got Micah Gallup 4%. On the other side of that game, you got TJ Hawkinson, Amon St. Brown. TJ Hawkinson 2%, Amon St. Brown 9%. This is a guy, when healthy, who has been on a tear. And we know what TJ Hawkinson could do as well, as we saw it several weeks ago against Seattle. So these guys are going to be low owned in a game that projects highly. And we know Seattle has a poor defense. So if the Cowboys are putting up points, Detroit. They both have bad defense. That's why I got it mixed up. Detroit, we know they could score too, and they have the bad defense, so they will be forced to score in a situation like this. So we like that. Let's take a look over at running backs. Some of the guys I mentioned actually. So I mentioned that game, And in that game, we have DeAndre Swift 1% owned right now. Now, this could change because DeAndre Swift obviously has been hurt. And, once the field knows that he's going to play, I'm sure his ownership percentages will climb. But right now, it's really low, and he's expected to play. So I think we could assume that it'll climb for sure. But I wouldn't see it being much higher than 10 to 15%. And, DeAndre Swift is a guy that I would jam in at that type of ownership. Now, Breece Hall looked really good last week. It's a bad matchup against the Broncos this week. But he is the heart of that offense right now. And let's not act like the Broncos haven't been known to give up a lot of rushing yards. Josh Jacobs absolutely gashed them for 150 yards a few weeks ago. So certainly Breece Hall can eat. And if he's going to be low owned again after several really good weeks, he catches passes, he runs the ball, he just looks very dynamic. I certainly would like Breece Hall. Now, Travis Etienne, I mentioned it. He is a guy who just looks a lot better than James Robinson right now. He's very explosive, and they're incorporating him into the offense. So, and I'm a James Robinson guy. I picked him up on the waiver wire a couple of years ago, and I've used him as a keeper back-to-back years. He's been awesome, but James Robinson certainly is more of an effective runner type of bruiser, and Travis Etienne is more of a pass catcher who get him in space, and he's just very explosive. I could take it to the house on any plays. He almost did a couple times last week. So as far as wide receivers, we mentioned Amon-Ra St. Brown. Mike Evans, if everyone's going to be on Godwin and getting in cash, myself included, Mike Evans at under 8%, I really like that. As I mentioned, I will go right back to MBS at 6%. And then in that same game, Brandon Ayuk, if they're going to be in a negative game script again and forced to throw the ball, it's a positive game script for Brandon Ayuk. So at 6%, I certainly like him, especially if most of the field is going to be on Debo, which he projects very well. I'm sure most of the field will be on him as far as the pass catchers go in that offense. And then mentioned Gallup Waller. He didn't play a couple weeks ago, and then they went on the bye week. So he's coming in low owned right now. And really just because he hadn't done anything this year. But if the field's going to be on Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams, that is direct leverage. That's the kind of guy you play. And then Dallas Cowboys, their defense has been good. They've created a lot of turnovers. So they're going against the Detroit Lions. Certainly, let's not act like Jared Goff hasn't been known to turn the ball over. Let's not act like the Detroit Lions don't turn the ball over. So those are certainly some plays I think defensively you could do a lot worse than that if they're going to be low owned. From an ownership standpoint, and, as we saw last week in the Millie Maker, you want to target low-owned defenses more times than not, unless you get a defense that's in a really good matchup against a poor quarterback. If you can just have a somewhat good defense in a decent matchup and they're low-owned, you're trying to be on the right side of variance. So that's certainly when you want to play a defense like the Cowboys at 3% owned, who has been known to score a lot, with guys like Trayvon Diggs who can take the ball and a pick six at any moment if you target him. So I think that's going to do it for week 7. I hope you all have great luck this week in cash and the Yahoo Baller. Good luck to you this week. Be sure to comment, like, subscribe, and share, and hit that notification button so you never miss an episode. Wish you all the best with this week, and we will see you next week.